I'm Dr. Julie Pham, founder of Curiosity Based. We help people practice curiosity in the world, starting in the workplace, because that is where we spend most of our waking hours. Curiosity as a practice boils down to self-awareness, relationship building, and clear communication. So join us as we interview leaders to see how they use curiosity at work. Hi there, this is Dr. Julie Pham with the Curiosity at Work podcast. And today I'm super excited to get to chat with Joe Sky Tucker, who is the CEO of Business Impact Northwest, a 20 plus year nonprofit leader, also a trained social worker. I know him because he was actually the professor of one of my colleagues at the School of Social Work. And so lots of varied background, and we're excited to learn, Joe, how you practice curiosity at work, especially at a nonprofit that serves entrepreneurs. A lot of times people don't think of nonprofits as doing that. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to talk about this, and I'm super excited to have this conversation because I think it's so needed.
So Joe, if you could just first tell people, what does Business Impact do? We use the acronym BIN, right? If you could share a bit of what it does, and then also who do you employ?
Yeah,
Where are they? Remote? Are they in person? What are the different functions? How many people? Yes, if you could just
sure.
share.
Yeah, so at a high level, Business Impact Northwest helps small businesses across the region. So we work in 4 states, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Alaska. And we have two key functions that we do is training and technical assistance on one side and access to capital or lending on the other side. And so we have about 60 employees across the region. All of them we call hybrid or remote. Kind of that distinction. We do have some offices, some small offices that people go into on occasion, but for the most part, people are working from home and then going to other meetings in the field as needed. So that's kind of how we have it divided up. We did a survey a few years ago as COVID was winding down. Did we want to bring people back into the office? And we asked our staff, and it was a resounding no, we don't want to come into the office. And so we're like, okay, we hear you. We won't make you come into the office. So we've really been able to push our breadth of our services because of that, I think, as well. We do lots of stuff online, but also lowering our overhead costs has allowed us to be in more
Mhm.
places and have more staff out there. So they're all full-time employees, W-2 employees. So that's been really fun.
How many people were you at 2 years ago?
2 years ago, I think we were around 40. When I started in 2016, like 9 years ago, we were at 15, 16 people.
Oh
So
my gosh.
really a lot of growth. I thought we were going to figure out a way to get people back into our offices and all of that. And, we listened to our staff. We said, what do you want to do? How can we make this work? And they said, we don't want to come into the office. We want to keep it as it is. And we're like, okay, let's figure out how to do that. So I think that's really the foundation of our work as an organization is to create a feedback loop where we're listening to our staff and being curious about what they have to say and taking what they have to say and infusing it into our programs.
I love that, Joe, especially because you serve entrepreneurs. In fact, Curiosity Base is one of your clients. We've taken classes through BIN. And to be an entrepreneur, you have to have quite a bit of a yes mentality too. There has to be that inherent optimism because there is so much risk. And so I'm just thinking about how the people who we serve can also influence the nature of the work and feedback into how we're going to serve. We have internal clients, our employees, and then the external clients as well. And that you were able to actually use the savings to expand even more. And did your customers prefer the entrepreneurs you work with also like that hybrid or the ability to do things virtually too?
For the most part, and then what we end up using when people want to be in person is we have drop-in hours where people can come sign up for and meet with a person in person. We have some classes that are in person as well, or kind of doing a hybrid of that. We do some asynchronous stuff, and then we'll even do online kind of, I'm trying to think, workshop-esque, where they're kind of parsing out the curriculum with our staff and with each other, that cohort-based model. I think we learn more from each other than sometimes we do from the instructor if we're in the right environment. So
Mhm.
we're always trying to figure out ways to be more creative. We have on-demand classes. We have, as I said, kind of those hybrid asynchronous and then in-person events, and then we have kind of in-person or all in-person and then all virtual. Um, Really trying to reduce as many barriers as possible and create as many modalities of connection as possible as well. So all of that kind of leads into that basis. You use the obviously Curiosity Base as your company, and we use you as a trainer coming into our organization as well. We have a different name for it, but a very similar value around curiosity in our workplace. And a lot of that curiosity comes from, I consider a place of how do we say yes to this? That's kind of my
Mm.
um, and so even within our programs, I'm always trying to think of like when I'm talking to new stakeholders, how can we make it work? Doesn't always mean that it works, but to me that opens up the opportunity for something interesting to happen. Your belief around curiosity, we call it our heard, seen, appreciated, and accountables are the core
Mhm.
tenets of our management philosophy or leadership philosophy that we have. And it really starts with listening to people, whether it's our clients or whether it's our staff, and really empowering and bringing their voice into things. I can think of, you know, there are multiple examples, but I was trying to think of for this podcast to kind of talk through, my journey as a CEO is, when I started, I had some rough notions of what I wanted it to be and how to be a leader, and you kind of take a lot of lessons learned are from the bosses that I loved, bosses that I
Mhm.
needed,
Mhm.
kind of my
Mhm.
own personal beliefs, and kind of started putting them all together, if you will, and trying to parse out what resonated with me, what worked. And I have swung kind of the pendulum around, I think a lot of people do, of like two kind of the micromanagey, if you will,
Mhm. Mhm.
to
Mhm.
hands off, and like always kind of trying to navigate that. I do remember a couple of things. When I first started, we had a staff member who was trying to sort out their department a little bit, and she wanted to talk with the board chair, and I remember, it was a very clear moment of, we can this is not what we use our board for. As you were saying, around nonprofits are, if you're not familiar with them, we have a board of directors that kind of oversees, could think of it as the supervisor of the CEO, if you will, providing strategic direction, fiscal oversight, that sort of thing for the organization. So,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
prior to this moment, I probably would have hemmed and hawed and said maybe, or we can talk about it. But I also knew that in that moment, the kindest thing to be was direct and to say,
Mhm.
don't use our board chair for that. You use
Mhm.
me and your other team members to do that. And so that was a big learning of like, you have to be a little uncomfortable at times. And, and I really come around to that belief that sometimes the kindest thing to be is direct around
Mhm. Mhm.
what the expectations are and aren't. And then also trying to give people opportunities to kind of fill the void. So we have a real ethic around promotion from within. And so we are currently in a little bit of a transition with a couple staff members who've left, and we've figured it out. And so we have, I was going to hire another kind of executive position. And I was meeting with the team, and I watched the team and how they were responding to the person who's kind of in the interim role.
Mm.
And they were excited, engaged, and following her. And so
Mhm.
I made the decision there. We don't need to go outside. We have someone right here who's ready. They need a little bit of support. So that's where the organization comes in, where I can support them. We're going to have some other staff members kind of support their development because they're pretty new at this, and there's some kind of learnings that they need to have, just kind of technical stuff. But that's also a thing of like, most of the time people will rise to the occasion. And so if we put trust in them and support them, we can we don't have to go find the perfect person. The perfect person could be sitting down the hall from you. They just haven't been given the opportunity. And so being open to that, I think, as a leader and as an organization is hard, but it's really important to be open to those moments. I think, like I said, I have made every mistake you can make as a boss. Um, and I think we're not necessarily taught to step back always and
Mhm.
look at ourselves. There's a classic when we talk about our businesses, you work in your business, but are you working on your business? So it's like, are you working on yourself as a leader? This is my first real, my first CEO role. And I really and still struggle with delegation properly. I will just do it
Mhm.
myself. I know I'm going to do it better and faster and all of that. And so I've struggled with delegation. And he had this moment where he was talking. He ran a big credit union before he retired, and he said he was meeting with staff, and they were asking a specific question, and he kind of felt like it was a little bit of like a gotcha question of like, well, what about this new technology? And he was like, I don't know. I don't know anything about that new technology, but that's not my job. It's your job because you're the one who's interacting with that technology to understand it. It's my job to be the leader of the organization, and this is what I do. And to me, that was the aha moment of like, I don't have to be an
Mm.
expert at everything the organization does.
Mm.
I need to be an expert in what I do. And so it took some pressure off of needing to understand all of the loan processes, all of what we do. I need to know in a general level, but I'm not the one that should be giving coaching or approving loans or underwriting loans. I need to be the leader of the organization. And that's a different skill set and different needs. And so that has always stuck with me that I don't need to be, and you don't need to be as a leader to do everything, be all things to all people. Hire people.
And that was your
Yeah.
board chair who gave you that advice then?
Yeah.
Who Yeah, and I really appreciate that actually in that nonprofit structure, how in a healthy relationship, the CEO, executive director can be in really close relationship, mentorship really with the board chair.
I had a good board that was patient with me as well. I think that that's the other piece that you need to have with growth and with investing in people is we expect results to be perfect and immediate and strong, and there's ebbs and flows in all of it. Um, Another lesson that I learned early on from the board chair, and I don't know if he even really realized this lesson. I had come up through programs and varied background.
What you're describing about promoting from within and seeing how and recognizing that how the team members were engaging and reacting to this team member is just, oh, well, this person just needs a little bit more training, and then they could actually grow into that role. That really reflects a learning organization and investing in the people that you already have, because actually what I've been seeing is people spend all this time, nonprofits and other organizations too will spend all this time doing a big search, hiring, trying to find the perfect executive. They come in and then they stay for less than a year. And then they actually just end up promoting someone who was already there. And I just think, wow, what if they just done that from the get-go? So I really appreciate what you're saying about creating this, what I think of as a learning organization, where you actually promote from within and people are seeing that and they then see that there's a pathway for them to grow. And also just to recap what you were saying about I think it's that heard, seen, appreciated, accounted for.
Accountable. So accountability. Yeah.
So basically 4x growth since you've come in, which means you've had to do a lot of hiring. So my next question is around, what is your when you're interviewing for people, and you said curiosity is really important, what's a question or how do you help identify
Funny.
that?
I have a couple questions I like to ask. I have a gut feel around who's going to be a fit. And so we're kind of looking for a type, which is we're looking for high achievers who are pretty self-motivated, but also understand the nonprofit work, so have a heart for the work we're doing, and also aren't going to be too aggressive on we don't want to upset the apple cart. Like we can
Mhm.
navigate creative tensions, But if we have someone that comes in who's just like, I'm going to get, I'm going to sell $1 million in loans or something like that, it's just not going to work, So I really like to ask a couple questions. One is just around how they prioritize. So one of my favorites, like like the classic competing deadlines question.
Mm,
To me, it's a problem solving question of what are they going to do? Most everyone answers it around, talking with different people. But it's for me is I want to see their process around how they're going to solve this problem. Um, and I really like to ask about where they worked before and what was the
mm,
best fit for them. Because I'm interested in understanding what they're looking for. To me, that's a culture question. What do they look for from what do they want from their employer? Because I talked briefly about our management philosophy, but the accountability piece is a two-way street that we talk about. So you are
mhm.
accountable to the organization for your job to do, but the organization is also accountable to you to provide, a living wage, good benefits, hopefully a mission that's bigger than yourself that we can kind of create a legacy around. And so that's what I'm trying to get at with those questions. And I like to see how they kind of react in an interview setting. We try to take as much of everyone's nervous. So try to take some of the
Mhm.
nerves away and make it conversational because, you know, interviews are kind of no one's really in those positions in their day-to-day work. They're working in a team. And so teams are just kind of iterative processes that happen and you're working together. So how can we kind of semi-replicate that in an interview? It's impossible to completely do it, but we do try to do that in a sense. So, but those are my two
I
favorite questions.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you're saying about that give and take in asking the question of the fit and how you're actually looking for them to describe that. What did they not just expect to get from the organization, but also what were they giving
Yeah.
to? Because I think with curiosity, there needs to be reciprocity. We think of uh, curiosity as a practice, and that's second, the first element, self awareness, second, it being relationship building, and reciprocity being really core to that. So, Joe, there's times when we get to lean in and be curious and get to listen and see people and appreciate them and help each other stay accountable. What about what prevents curiosity? Because we can't always be curious. So, what prevents curiosity in your particular workplace, in your industry?
I think it becomes sometimes a capacity issue and that fear of you're busy and you get really, really busy, and then it doesn't allow reflection points. And so I think that that's really the challenge about staying curious, or it's finding the breaks in the work that's happening. But when you get into just the everyone's super busy, we're all trying to do this, pressures of competing deadlines and all of the stress that happens, it becomes really easy to let go of those things that help you feed you and support your growth, and just get by. And so I think that's really the biggest challenge. I know that for me personally, when I'm in that space of just working and I'm probably working too many hours and I'm stressed that the work is not at the right quality, that you can't sprint forever.
Hmm.
And it's hard for me because, I had someone ask me once, what does third gear feel like? And I was like, that feels terrible. I always want to go as fast and as far as possible. um, but I also know that we need to have breaks or we cannot kind of be rejuvenated and keep doing this over the long term because you burn out. I think that that's the stress, and not being able to be curious really is driven by that fear and by just being too busy all the time. Um, and I think it isn't common practice either. I think what you are doing, Julie, with your business is really unique. And people don't practice this. They don't sit down and think about these things as often as they should. And so you have these bad habits where you have learned, well, my old boss used to do it like this, and this is how I'm going to do it. And so it just kind of carries on. But um, that's why it is transformational and hopefully revolutionary if people can stop and just relax and think about these things and be intentional. I think there's an intentionality around curiosity that's important. not just letting it happen to you, but being an active participant in it.
I can see how that capacity issue, I see that especially with nonprofits because there's such a desire to help. It's like we should help more people. And there's sometimes even that martyr syndrome too. Just,
Yep.
oh, we need to give ourselves because there are people, especially in social service
Yep.
nonprofits. And I know that you've spent a lot of your career before you've been in that. And then also with what you said about curiosity being what can you say yes to, and then it's just, oh, we said yes to too many
Yeah.
things. So there can sometimes be those mixed messages too.
Absolutely.
So Joe, here's my last question. My last big question for you is, what is a resource or a source of inspiration for you in terms of curiosity? And this doesn't have to do with work. It can, but it doesn't have to be.
Sure.
What just personally inspires you?
They're going to be work related because I'm unfortunately workaholic in that regard. But the two resources
Whatever goes.
that I really appreciate, and one, this is kind of this was made the rounds, 15 years ago or so, was Jim Collins's Good to Great. That, like, what are you really good at? What are you passionate about? And what drives your revenue? Those three things were front and center for me as I started a Business Impact Northwest. I couldn't have defined them for the first few years, but we're at a point where I can now and could have. And so that really drove it. And then I say Brene Brown's Braving framework around trust building, which is really important. So look up that. That's an acronym. I won't go into the details on it because I'll probably butcher it, but those are two really important resources because I think they kind of sit on both sides of the ledger. There's kind of like what's driving the work, but also how you do it, and the importance of doing it in a way that's building trust, not just with your staff, with your clients, and with stakeholders. That's really the key piece of this, is that it's not just a one-way street. And so I think that the Brene Brown framework really is helpful in that.
Yeah, going back to that reciprocity, we have to have that back and forth.
Absolutely.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and how it is in this nonprofit setting with our listeners. How do people get in touch with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me at businessimpactnw.org. Feel free to reach out. I think my contact information is on there. I'm also happy to share it if people reach out and talk more. And if you want to start a small business or grow your business, come find us. And always happy to make connections with folks. So a pleasure to talk with you. And I just have to say, I am so excited to watch your growth and the work that you're doing as well. I think it is so important. And so, I'm a little biased because obviously Lynn is on your team and I've known her for years, and we use you and then you've used our services. So talk about the reciprocity piece of this is, I feel invested in your success as well. And so I think I'm just excited to watch you grow and blossom and do all the crazy things you're doing. So congratulations.
Joe, thank you so much. And we have just been big fans of Business Impact Northwest too, and the support that you provide to entrepreneurs. I mean, as a small business owner, there are so many resources out there. People just don't realize that.
Yeah.
So, well, with that, thank you so much for sharing on Curiosity at Work podcast. And for listeners, remember to practice curiosity in the world, starting in the workplace, because that's where we spend most of our waking hours.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. Thanks, everyone.